Hey there everybody, this is Robin with Creative2xmom, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the books we read in the month of July. So welcome back to the channel. My name is Robin and this is Creative2xmom. This channel is all about homeschooling, parenthood, and thriving in the day-to-day. And at the end of every month I put up a video like this one where I share with you what I read personally as well as the read-alouds that we did with our kids. Even before we were homeschoolers, we had a routine of sitting down and reading every night with our kids, and as they got older, that turned into chapter books, which we love to share with you guys as well. So let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of July was The Endless Step. Now, this book was supposed to be part of our Story of the World Volume 4, which we used for our history curriculum last year, but I wasn't able to get it. Apparently it was super popular. I'm wondering if everybody was doing Story of the World last year because I was quite a ways down on the holds list, but I decided to go ahead and read it for myself. This is the story of a young girl and her family who are sent away to Russia during World War II, and they are sent to a work camp in Siberia, and they have to learn how to survive. It's the story of her and her parents and her grandmother who are sent away, and it's shown through the eyes of this young girl who's about 12 or 13 and what life was like, what they were accused of, how they were treated, and how they had to survive. Now you get to the end of the book and you realize that this is this young girl's actual real life experience, and it really brings it down to a very human level of what that time period was like. For me personally, this was a great read, but I would also recommend it for any of you who have kids in that upper middle school, maybe 9th grade reading level, because it really brings a very human aspect to that time period. In fact, I think I am going to probably be assigning this one to my daughter next year as she's in 8th grade. It's a great piece of historical fiction that I think every kid should read. The next book that was on my July reading list was Know and Tell, The Art of Narration by Karen Glass. Now you guys know that we have slowly been incorporating more and more elements of the Charlotte Mason style into our homeschool, and this came as a recommendation to learn more about narration. I have really struggled with narration over the years to know, is it enough? Is that possibly enough to assess how my kids are doing in their language arts? So I thought I would pick this up to get a little bit of a better perspective of the real practical, hands-on aspects of narration. So let me just share with you a little bit from the back of the book. The art of narration is the art of telling. It extends from the oral traditions of ancient cultures to today's headlines. We all want to tell each other things, and shared communication deepens our relationships and enlightens our understanding. So this book really goes through the process of narration, how it's something that as human beings we do from a very young age through oral narration, telling what happened in our day, how we did things, the process of how we created something. I see this in my kids all the time. And how to take that from an oral narration into a written narration. She also has lots of good examples of real life narration that the kids have shared throughout her research in this book. I would say probably nearly half of this book probably is just examples of real life kids using oral and written narration. This was a great book for me to really get my mind around what that would look like in a homeschool environment. I think that we might try this a little bit more. This gave me the courage to do a little bit more narration in the fall and start to move us in that direction and see what that would look like for us. She also has some really great practical ideas for if you have late starter narration, which for us that would be for my daughter who's going into 8th grade, what to then expect and how to transition that as you move into high school. I would highly recommend this. If you are looking into the Charlotte Mason philosophy at all, I would put this really near the top, probably right behind Sonia Schaefer's For the Children's Sake, and then I would get my hands on this one very early on because I think that would benefit those Charlotte Mason homeschool moms out there. The next book that I read in the month of July was Homeschool Bravely. Now this was a reread for me. It's one of those books that I reread every summer because I feel like it really prepares me for going back into the homeschool year. This is not necessarily a technique book as much as it is an encouraging read, particularly the first half of the book. Very much so. She sets you up for, has the Lord called you to this? How can you know if the Lord has called you to this? And if he has, here is the scripture and here is his character to back you up and help your homeschool be successful. That's not to say that you are entirely equipped for this journey, but more so that if the Lord has called you, you will succeed. So take hold of that scripture when you are in doubt. The second half of the book has a few more practicalities in it, but the main theme woven throughout the entire book is to march on with bravery. It's not all about you, but more so about building the foundation of your homeschool on the Lord, and if you do that, you will always succeed. This is one of those books that encourages me every year, helps me get prepared for a new homeschool year, and is right at the top of my list when people say, what do you recommend for getting started? This is that book that rises to the top for me every time, because it's less about the technique and the structure and the curriculum, but more about the mindset and the preparation personally for getting ready to homeschool your kids. The next book I read was also a review book, and it was Raising Resilient Kids. Now this book was totally not what I expected. I was thinking it was going to be more of a growth mindset style book, and there were elements of that in there, but it also touched on things like getting good sleep, good nutrition, being outdoors, lots of the things that build you healthy in your mind, your body, your spirit, your emotions. The writer of this book went out and she researched people who were right around 100 years old to find out what was their secrets to resilience, and then she found the overlap and she created the chapters, these principles based on the things that they had in common that helped them reach this resilient, ripe old age. Now, this was a review book, so I will link my full written review down below. But as for me personally, I found the book to have really great concepts. I thought that the writing was a little clunky, the structure was a little clunky. I enjoyed the way the author broke it into challenges for your family, so you could take a challenge a week, which is what she suggests. But just the structure was a little bit off for me. I think for a new parent, this would be a great book for getting started if you're in those early elementary years and you're building your family culture. A lot of these things, though, for some of us who have been parenting for a while, they were topics that have probably already been explored. But as a new parent, probably a good book to check out. So after some of those heavier topics of getting ready for homeschool, parenting, raising resilient kids, my brain needed a little bit of a break. And on the review site that I am a part of, I saw this one pop up that looked like a lot of fun. It's Willodeen. This book is part fantasy, part, I don't know what you would call it, science. It's not science fiction, but science literature. This is the story of a young girl who lives in a small town. In my mind, they never said where it was, but in my mind I was thinking very rural America. And she has a fascination with these creatures. And as they describe creatures and animals within the book, they're all fantastical, and yet you can see how they would relate to real life science topics. So these creatures that she loves are very stinky. Everybody else thinks of them as pests and rodents, and they have been hunted off and they are dying off to the point where she hasn't seen one in quite a while. And this young boy that she meets, he carves one for her, and one night it comes to life. And it's about their journey of trying to protect these animals because they're finding out that this particular creature is a very important part of the ecosystem of their area. And as other plants and animals are dying off and the town is trying to figure out why, it's this one creature that has been hunted that is becoming a very vital part of keeping their ecosystem going, and it's about their efforts to conserve that animal. Really good book. I think it's very timely for the world that we are living in, finding an element of purpose for everything in our ecosystems. I think it's one of those books that I would happily pass off to my kids. I will link my full written review down below. And the last book that I read in the month of July was A Christmas Engagement. Now this was a review book as well, so I will link my full written review down below. This is the story of Liz, who is getting on in years in the Amish community. She's still young as we would look at her on the outside, but for that community, she's probably past the age of marrying, and she's come to accept that. She loves her job, she loves the people that she's around, but you start to dig into her backstory and you find out that she had a broken engagement that has actually put her in this position of just being very guarded. Yes, she loves who she is and she loves her place in the community, but there is that element of healing that still needs to happen. Of course, you got to bring in the romance of her friendship with Matthew, who is her boss, and she actually does not get along with him in the beginning, and then you find out there's this mutual attraction, and where that goes, that she has to heal first before she can really open her heart to him. I enjoyed this book, but it was very sweet. The action was good until about halfway through the book, and then it just kind of flatlined. And when you look into the background of the author, it sort of starts to make sense how there's not a lot of conflict in the book and why there's not a lot of conflict in the book. It kept me engaged until that halfway point. I ended up finishing it, but it was just a very kind of flatlined second half of the book. If you're looking for something just very sweet and gentle, this might be one of those books that I would maybe more so be willing to hand off to my teenage daughter, perhaps, because it's not too sensationalized. It's still very sweet and innocent. I don't know if I will read any more from this author or not. That's just sort of my take on where she's at. I wish there would have been a little bit more action in the second half of the book. Now that was a lot of reading in the month of July. I'm not sure that I did anything else. I'm really going to have to slow it down in August because we're going to be going back to school and I'm going to have to get back into a routine. But I think that I set myself up well with how much I read in July. Now as for what we read with the kids, we are continuing on in the Green Ember series, and we read book number 3, Ember Rising. This is a series that we started back in the month of May, and we have been working our way through these books. These books are very, very long, and this is a series that I would definitely label as an epic. I was thinking the other day, why does it seem to fall in line with that? And I think it's because there are these other lands and it's so sprawling. When I think of it and I visually picture it in my mind, I have a huge mental map of the area that they have covered. Just when you think, okay, we have to have some sort of resolution to what's happening here, they introduce so many more characters and so much more area, and not in a way that it flatlines, and it's done in a way that you're still staying engaged and very much so interested, because the author has a way of bringing in very rich characters, very rich kingdom. And so we are right now at the end of book 3. We've got Heather and Pickett, and we are moving into book 4 where there has to be some resolution. This battle between good and evil and right and wrong, and who is going to win between the rabbits and the lords of prey. It has very much so kept us engaged. I am so invested in this series now that I think I might actually want to read book 4 even more so than the kids. So those are all the books that we read in the month of July. I feel like I've been rambling on for a really long time. I was shocked when I sat down and put my list together how much reading we actually did in the month of July. So what's coming for August? I've already talked about how I really am going to have to scale back in August because we are moving back into homeschool, back into routine. But I have a few things that I do want to hit before the craziness of the fall. And this book I have already started. This is Better Together by Pam Barnhill. When I talk about homeschool books that I return to again and again every year, this is on that list as well. This helps me prep my morning basket. So I'm going to be reading this one in the month of August. I'm about a third of the way through the book already, and I have Awakening Wonder by Sally Clarkson coming up right behind it. That will wrap up my homeschool reading for the summer seasons. That will mean that I've gotten in, I think, 4 in that category to really set me up for the next 10 months. I'm also going to be pulling Vertical Marriage by Dan and Ann Wilson. This is a marriage book that I haven't read before, but it intrigued me because it talked about in the introduction that Dan thought they had a really healthy marriage till one night and came to him and said, "I'm really not happy and we need to do something about this." I think a good marriage book every once in a while gets you refocused on the most important relationship in front of you. So I'm excited to read this one. I haven't read it before. We'll see if it's any good. So that is on my list for the month of August. Of course, I've already talked about we have to finish the Green Ember series with the kids. I am so invested at this point that I am anxious to see how it all wraps up in book number 4. So that's what we have read over the past month and what we're getting ready to read. I can't believe we're at the end of the summer already. What have you been reading over the last month? Has it been a light read for you? Have you been prepping for the new school year? What is on your reading list? Leave me a comment down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.